Managing Property Training. I'm Catherine Brennan, owner and founder. Hit the subscribe button there if you'd like to be alerted when we add new things, and also the little bell will give you notifications. So who am I? I suppose a background to me. My name is Catherine Brennan. I am about 22 years investing in property, so I had a lot of buy-to-lets before the last recession. I have now moved over completely really to flipping assisted sales, and I also do insolvency work with clients who are in negative equity. I'll also do a separate video on what are the options for negative equity. So I qualified as an accountant, about 4 years ago. I set up a practice, a non-account audit practice of my own nearly straight away. So I worked in packaging multinational for a couple of years. Then I set up a practice of my own, and what we did was we went into businesses saving time and money, and that's work I still really love. I even find that there's the same spillover into property. It's helping people do things the most efficient way, because when people get into property and they start going to property training courses and they're learning all these different strategies, and there's buy-to-lets and HMOs and rent-to-rents and serviced accommodation, it becomes absolutely mind-blowing how much there is to learn, and an awful lot of people just absolutely drown in the level of detail there is. So my job in accountancy terms was going into companies. Many of them weren't as profitable as they could be, going through all of their costs and time, how long everything took to do and how much it cost then. You know, if it was 3 hours and someone is on a tenner an hour, it's €30 direct cost, obviously. But then there's a portion of overheads, there's running offices, there's running printers, there's all that extra cost. So without fail, we could find a 20% saving across the board in companies, not just on parts or things that they were selling, but on the people, the processes, the way they did things. So I found that work so enjoyable. But I was also at the time involved in a building company, building social houses, and I was also had a buy-to-let portfolio myself. So I had really very little free time. I was working a lot. So I had an offer from my accountancy firm back about 12 years ago, and I accepted it. And since then, really, I have focused on property and on unravelling situations for landlords almost full time. So I've dealt with over 400 insolvency cases in Ireland, and I've dealt with UK insolvency courses too, because sometimes Irish people have moved to the UK to get employment by the time their situation comes to a head. So things like landlords who would have had a lot of buy-to-lets, fallen into negative equity, and then when that happens you can't even sell the property. You can't just decide to exit. You need the bank's permission to sell the property if you can't clear the mortgage in full. So there's lots and lots of implications to that. There's lots of different things that happen when you go into negative equity. You can't refinance because your credit is ruined with once you've missed payments, or even if you've paid part payments. You know, I had a potential new client contact me last night, so he'd never missed a mortgage payment, but then it transpired he'd only ever been paying half of it. That's the same thing as missing it. If you don't meet the full contractual payment, you are still in default of the mortgage. So he hadn't realised that. He thought he'd refinance maybe, but that's completely off the table. So when I was doing all of these insolvency cases, everything from somebody with one house who used to be a family home. So I don't deal with family homes because they're better protected by a personal insolvency arrangement, which I normally refer those clients on. I did the PIP qualifications, but I never registered as personal insolvency practitioner because you need really a high volume of those specific cases. And I would strenuously advise anyone not to go into one of those arrangements if they can get an informal arrangement. There's lots of reasons for that, but you can pop me a message if you need to discuss anything in private. So I deal with all landlords insolvency. So I've everything from people who've 30 units and they want to get rid of everything, to people who have 3 and they just have one bed egg and they want to keep it and get rid of the other 2. So there's all different solutions, obviously, for all the different problems. But alongside this, I've also been doing flips and assisted sales. I got rid of my own portfolio, most of which was in negative equity during the recession. I had lots and lots of negative equity then to get sorted with different banks. I had a very kind of scattergun approach, which I'd say lots of people had prior to the last recession. They had mortgages with every bank, and not one point of contact that you could sit down and discuss your situation with, but account managers in 6 or 7 different banks, which was very, very common. Now the actual amount of banks lending in Ireland is much, much smaller, so you just don't have that situation. And then you have all the vulture funds as well, which clients' loans have now been sold to. Again, it's funny really. I see so many people in Ireland giving out about vulture funds, and yeah, they're tough compared to the banks. But the reason we have vulture funds in Ireland is because our banking laws are so soft. You know, in England, the property would just have been taken off you. There'd be no vulture fund because you wouldn't have got past month 6 with the property in arrears. So it's all very well given out, but in fact, we have to bear in mind that the reason we have vulture funds and the reason our interest rates are high is because people, the big competitive banks, do not want to come here to lend anymore because they've realised it's very, very hard to get back possession of your security even if the person defaults. So there's a good lot of complication around that. So I still help existing landlords exit from situations that they're struggling with. But I also train people coming into the market. So we do training in deal packaging. We do training in flips and assisted sales, which are hands-off strategies. So that's for people who maybe have a bit of capital of their own, or maybe they are going to raise investor finance. That's all covered in the training, and use investors' funds to buy flips and sell them on, or do assisted sales. And then we also do training to building a portfolio with minimum money down, which shows you all the creative strategies like lease options, delayed completions, tenant buyers, and vendor finance, all the kind of complicated things, all the reasons in a way which when you're new, you're probably scratching your head saying, how on earth did that person get 10 properties by the time they were age 30? That's how they're doing it. There's no magic. There's nobody saving 30% for a new deposit every year, or if there's very, very few people doing that. It's creative strategies and it's buying things that you can add value to, etc. So we do training on all of that. I suppose my own background is a mix of, I'm probably unusual enough property person, or you have a great mix of people in property, but I'm an accountant, a financial advisor, I've lectured in accountancy. I've, as I say, completed personal insolvency exams, didn't register, so I do all informal arrangements, but I'm also an interior designer and a life coach. So it's a whole cocktail of things that I look at with people about all of their plans and what are they trying to get into or out of, and how will that affect where they're trying to go, or how does it fall in with their goals. Because sometimes when you chat to people, they say, you know, they want to, I was chatting to somebody, for the example, the other day, taking redundancy from a bank, and they want a peaceful life and they just want to pursue their hobbies a bit more and spend a bit more time with their kids and etc. But then what they described to me was far from peaceful. But because they hadn't a huge amount of experience of buy-to-lets, I suppose they didn't realise how much hassle what they were describing was going to be, where I was able to suggest alternatives straight away that might be better suited to them. So it's a cocktail of those skills, I suppose, I use to help people. It's part life coaching, it's part finance, and it's part property. So it's people who are trying to exit the market are just as important to me as people who are trying to get into it. I mean, the young people who are all excited and want to build a portfolio, then for every one of them, there's also somebody who's 65 and it's time for them to sell up, and maybe they thought their own kids would take over the portfolio and they haven't. So it's interesting. It's problem solving. It's the exact same job really I was doing in accountancy 25 years ago, was how can we get this to work faster and cheaper and do the same job basically. So that's what we do here at Intelligent Property Training. We also take in funds from investors and we invest them and pay a fixed return and offer security, etc. So We've people who are hands-on, we've people who are hands-off, and we've some people we do joint ventures with as well. So we're in the middle, we're doing jobs together. I'm helping with the bits which would be my strength, like anything around banking, staging, furnishing, decor, and they're sometimes the one then doing the trades themselves and doing the finding. So all sorts of arrangements and all types of people. There's a niche in property, I firmly believe, for everyone. So that's a little bit about us. Feel free to subscribe here, get notifications, but also feel free to come and join us on Facebook in our closed group, and we can sign you up to newsletters, etc. So I hope you found that interesting. Thanks.